Well, hello, gentlemen, and there is Stan Phelps himself, who we just watched on an interview, and I just love listening to that again. And David, hello. I have
Hello.
I have seen your work, and I've heard you've been traveling recently with Stan about your pink goldfish work, and I'm delighted to meet you here. Delighted to meet you here. As a quick introduction for the audience, not only during campus party, but if you're watching this, later on YouTube, I saw Stan present on one of his streams, I think on Facebook, some tips about getting a job. And thinking to myself, during this crazy time in humanity, there's a lot of people looking for jobs. So I said, and I have got a couple tricks up my sleeve. So I said, can we just have an impromptu open session, 30 minutes? And you recommended to bring David on, which I'm delighted. And we're just going to mix it up and see if we can give some people some pointers to help them out in this difficult time. So maybe David, would you like to introduce yourself, and then we can loop it back to Stan?
Yeah, my name is David Rendall. I'm a professional speaker. Live in North Carolina. Wrote 4 books, including The Freak Factor, and used to be a college professor teaching management and leadership. And before that, I helped people with disabilities to get job opportunities. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing Ironman triathlons when they're not all canceled, and running ultramarathon races when they're not canceled.
Wow, brilliant. Stan, how about yourself?
Great. So similar to Dave, author and speaker based here in North Carolina. I'm coming at you this morning. I know it's your afternoon, Chris, but from a place called the Research Triangle Park. And so I'm the author of the Goldfish series of books. Perhaps the best one of the first 10 colors is Pink Goldfish, which I wrote with Dave. So excited to share that, because it's one of those rare books in the series that crosses over not just marketing and business, but to personal, career, relationships, parenting. It's brilliant.
I found that book a bit confronting, however, because it's talking about weird and normal and more and less. And I think sometimes I opt out of that zone of acceptability. Maybe sometimes it may be too weird and too much. Myself, Chris Parker, originally from the States, living here in the Netherlands, so I'm just outside of Amsterdam. I do 3 things. I do transformational work in corporations, such as recently as a CTO role with the world's largest consumer energy sharing marketplace, which was super exciting. I also do business coaching and mentoring through incubators and startups, and I produce independent feature films. And we have just finished a short, my first short I've been working on as a producer, and that was early premiering last night on Campus Party. And we saw, I think there was about, to date, 175,000 people on the platform across 20 countries. So not only at this moment, there could be a lot of people watching, but certainly the crowd of Campus Party, who are a whole spectrum of ages and backgrounds. And I thought, how to find a job, how to get a job would be very relevant to that. So I've got a few things I can plug in at the end, but I really want to hear from you guys.
Great. Well, why don't we do this? Dave, why don't you give a little bit of a primer of the Freak Factor, and I think get people grounded in who they are. And then I want to be able to share a tool, Chris, which I call the ultimate job search tool, that can get somebody on the track to find their dream job.
Great. And I will loop in. I've got an executive summary that is almost guaranteed to get you an interview. And I've got my own tool that will trigger the questions to ask in the interview, because you always have to ask questions in the interview.
So the Freak Factor is based on the idea that your biggest weakness is also your biggest strength, and that sometimes the thing that you think you should be fixing or not doing or doing less of or dialing back or moderating, especially in order to get a job, is actually the thing that you should be cranking up. So for me, I spent my whole life getting in trouble because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. And now I get paid to stand up and talk and run my own business. So I think that's the first thing to say right off the front is maybe you shouldn't get a job at all. Maybe you need to start something. And maybe you need a job as you're starting that something, and maybe you need to experiment with that somehow. And maybe that's going to take you a while to do, but maybe the ultimate goal should be not to have a job or find a job, but to start something. Maybe that's you. And I think that's crucial. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this idea that every weakness has a corresponding strength can be a little bit difficult for people to maybe believe or accept. And so there's a great story that illustrates it really quickly, and it has to do with getting a job. So classic interview question, what's your biggest weakness? Right? So guy's sitting there, and the interviewers say, what's your biggest weakness? He goes, honesty. And the interviewer says, I don't think that's a weakness. And he goes, I don't give a crap what you think. Right? So every weakness has a corresponding strength. And that's one piece of advice that I would give people is in the interview, we try to sugarcoat that question. What's your biggest weakness? We try to find a way to talk about a weakness that isn't really a weakness. We try to not answer it all. We try to act like we don't have any relevant weaknesses. I tell people, tell them what your biggest weakness is, because if you trick them into giving you that job and it requires you to do something that's your biggest weakness, you've just made a terrible mistake. You've won a terrible game. And so that's one place to start. But I think there's two stories that I want to tell that I think will illustrate my mindset on how you find the right job. It's not about so much your experience and your skills. We tend to think like, oh, I like biology, or I like math, or I like fill in the blank, or what subject was I good in school? I think it's more about other things. Do you want to work with other people, or you want to work by yourself? Do you want to work during the day, or do you want to work during the night? Do you like being relatively active, or are you happy to kind of sit around? It's really more about how do you like to work than not what specifically do you want to do. Because sometimes people like pets, but that doesn't mean you're going to enjoy working at a pet store where basically your job is to clean up poop and feed animals. That's not, I like pets, right? If you like pets, get a pet. But working at a pet store is not, but to say I like to work on a team, then don't become a forest ranger where your job is to be in the middle of the wide open wilderness by yourself for months at a time. But if you love to be alone and you're not a team player, and that's your biggest weakness, I'm not a team player, then drive a truck, right? Be a forest ranger, do those kinds of things. So two stories that I think kind of tie into what my perspective is there's a guy named Matthias Schlitt. And he's a German guy, and he was born with KTS. And so KTS is a genetic abnormality where one of your four limbs is going to be gigantic in comparison to the rest. For him, it's his right arm. It's gigantic, absolutely huge, 3 times the size of his left arm. The rest of his body is perfectly normal, but his right arm is gigantic. And so what I talk about in the Freak Factor is finding alignment. I think too often when we think about finding a job, we ask things like, what's a good job? What's a good paying job? What's a good career? Those are terrible questions. There's no such thing as a good job. There's only a good job for you, right? There's only a good job for you. It doesn't matter if it pays a lot. It matters if you would be a good fit. So too often we think about, what do I need to do to make myself successful in that career or in that job? And I think that's a terrible question. I think the better question is, what job suits me? Who am I, and how do I match who I am with where I am? So Matthias Schlitt's born with this gigantic right arm. He finds alignment by doing what? By doing arm wrestling, right? He was born to do this thing. He can't go try to fit in somewhere else. He can't change the thickness of his arm. He can't become normal. So that goes back to your original thing. Like part of what I'm teaching is sometimes we don't have the choice if we're too much. Sometimes we don't have the choice if we're weird. Sometimes we can't hide it. And I think that's true kind of most of the time. So he becomes an arm wrestler. And here's the beauty. Not only does he get to use his right arm, he gets to make it even bigger. When you find the right fit, you get to be even more of who you are. People will want even more of what everybody used to want less of. So for me, doing ultra marathons, and ultra marathon is anything farther than the marathon distance, 42 kilometers or 26.2 miles. When I finish those, when I do an Ironman triathlon, when I run 100 miles, 160 kilometers, people say, wow, that's amazing. I could never do that. But my whole life in school, when I was very, very, very active, I was criticized and punished for it, right? Called hyperactive. it's a disability. We need to give you medicine to fix your ADHD. So you're criticized and punished. Then you go farther, and then you find that's where success lives. And so when we can find alignment, it allows us to amplify, turn up the volume on who we are, because we're in the right spot where people want more instead of less. And sometimes we can't find the right fit. Sometimes we have to create it. And I think that comes down to, like I talked about earlier, not necessarily finding the job, but maybe creating something for yourself. And my favorite example of that is a guy named Thorkild Son. And he's in Denmark. He's a Danish guy, and he had a son with autism. And two of the symptoms of autism he noticed were hyper-focus and doing the same thing over and over again. And when he would go to work in the software industry and look at software testing, he'd see that they really needed people who were hyper-focused and did the same thing over and over again. In fact, he saw they really struggled to find people with enough focus who were willing to do the same thing over and over again well enough. And he said, wait a second, that my son's in therapy to make him normal, like the other kids, to fix his disability, to stop these traits. And these are exactly the traits that we need in software testing. So he built a company called Specialistern, which means the specialists. And they only hire people with autism, and they only do software testing. And they've been so successful that SAP, the huge global software company, is now looking for people with autism to do the same. And I think we share that story in Pink Goldfish. So that's an example of not just finding the right fit. So somebody, when we're sharing this, they might go, well, that's nice, Dave, but that's kind of idealistic. Maybe I can't find the right fit. Maybe the right fit isn't out there for me. And then create it, right? The only option isn't to find it. And for parents, for spouses and loved ones, for friends, what if you were that person who created the right fit for others? What if you were looking for opportunities instead of saying that's not realistic? So one of my favorite examples of not realistic is one of my friends has dyslexia, and he's an entrepreneur. He spends half of his time running a global search engine optimization company, and the other half of his time being a professional sculptor, right? That's not a job, right? There's no ad you're ever going to find on Indeed.com or Monster.com or ZipRecruiter.com where they're going to be like, hey, we need someone who's half sculptor, half global SEO manager. So when you create your own thing, nobody would create a job like me, be professional speaker and endurance athlete. That's not a job description. Those aren't opportunities. Wear dinosaur shirts and pink headphones. Those aren't job opportunities, right? And so I think we have to think bigger about that. And even if we are working a job, and I talk about that in the Freak Factor, 7 ways to find the right fit without quitting your job, at least on the side, we need to be experimenting with things. You and Stan talked previously about writing a book. Start working on that book, start working on that idea, start creating that product or service, start sharing those videos on YouTube in your off time, start volunteering in that field that you think might want to be better. And so I think that's the last piece of advice that I would give is experiment, right? Experiment. Don't say, what kind of job should I get? Start volunteering somewhere, get part-time opportunities somewhere, follow your parents' friends around at their job. My daughter's already gone around to work with 3 or 4 medical professionals because she's thinking about going into the medical field. And we found a bunch of people, and they said, sure, spend the day with me. So she went with an optometrist and a pediatrician. And so she has a sense of what those things are. Try those things out. Take a class. Use one of your electives to take a class in something like that. Look up YouTube videos about it. Don't do it by thinking about it. Do it by trying those things and doing those things and seeing what you like and don't like about it. But I think, fundamentally, I think we need to look for jobs that fit the kind of person we are instead of imagining that I'll just discipline myself and be focused. And that's what work is doing something you don't like to do in order to make money and get paid. That's never going to work, especially not over a lifetime. Do you really want to do that for the next 45 or 50 years? Absolutely. Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And it also doesn't work. You're not going to be good at that. And at some point, they're not going to want you, even if you want to keep doing that job and keep getting that money. So it's not about that. It's about matching who you are. And it's not so much about, I think, the field or the subject as much as those things about how you work and how you like to work and the kinds of things that bring you joy and fulfillment.
Lovely. Stan.
Yeah, that's great. And so I want to reiterate a couple things that Dave said. One is I I think there's a reason why how-to books are bestsellers. It's super hard to change who you are. In fact, that's why people fail all the time. We talk about this idea of trying to be a better version of yourself. And the last thing just to share, I think Dave shared just a great piece of advice. Chip and Dan Heath, who are fellow authors, talk about this concept of ooching. And an ooch is kind of a small step. So I love the advice that Dave said of take a class, volunteer, job shadow somebody, before you make that big leap and get into something that you had that may not be the best fit. So a couple of things to share. I want to share this, which is amazing, this is research from a couple months ago from Statista that said, at least here in the U.S., that unemployment this year could be as high as 32.1%, which literally, it's like the old yarn, like, you're sitting down, look at the person to the right of you and to the left of you, right? And one of you this year is going to be in transition. And so the idea of having a tool that can help manage you through this transition is absolutely key. In fact, having a tool to help you over the course of your career, because believe it or not, the thing that 1 out of 3 people are going to deal with this year, over the course of their career, on average, the average person changes their job 12 times. And here's the thing, how long does it take to actually get a job? Well, the rule of thumb is this: for every $10,000 or 10,000 euros that you make, you're talking about 1 month is the rule of thumb. Yeah. And so think about it. If over the course of your career, if you could just reduce that time in half, right, for the 11 or 12 times you might be looking for a job, if you made on average $70,000 over the course of your career, cutting that job search in half could be worth upwards of $250,000 to you in lost revenue. So look, everyone's going to be in transition. What do I think most people do wrong when they get on this path is that they use the wrong tool. And the wrong tool, in my opinion, is they spend the majority of their time focusing on what? Focusing on job sites, right? And relying on algorithms. What are your odds of getting a job once you press the send button on that application? If you had to guess, Chris, what do you think your odds are?
0 or slightly higher. In my case, 0.
Well, let's just put it this way. It's not good. It's 0.4%, right? Wow. So that's 1 out of 2. Every 250 times you hit that send button is your odd. Yeah. So here's the thing. What's the best way to counteract? If that's the wrong way, well, what's the best way? And this is a no-brainer. It's simply getting introduced, right, by somebody who already works at the company that you're interested in. Yeah. And this is the most shocking stat right here, is that referrals account for 7% of applicants, but they account for 40% of all hires. So the question is, do you want to be in that 7% that are getting 40% of the throws, or do you want to be struggling with the other 93%, to get the rest of the 60%? There's no brainer, right? You want to be in that former group. But to do it, you need a tool. So really quick, I helped, this is something I've only been in transition once in my life, but this was kind of a mishmash of a tool that I used, and then I added my own spin to it. And I call it the ultimate job search tool. Simply, there's 3 parts to it. Let me take you through the 3 parts. The first part is going to be your resume condensed, literally like the Twitter version of your resume. somebody can scan that really quickly, get a sense of where you've been, the types of opportunities you've had. 2, and this is important, this is the 3 to 5 job titles that you're searching for. And that gives somebody that is potentially helping you an idea of where you need to be in the organization. And then lastly, and this is where all the gold is, Chris and Dave, it's the bottom third where you pick out 3 different verticals or types of companies, and you create a target list of 30 companies that you're interested in. Now, you've created this tool. Now, what's the next thing that you do? Here's the deal. You start to network, right? Now that you know those 30 companies and you have great tools like LinkedIn, who do you know that's potentially either working at those companies or potentially knows somebody that they can introduce you to? And your job is to simply work your network and reach out and do phone calls, probably phone calls or video calls now, or, when things clear up, maybe a cup of coffee. And really what you're looking for is you share that one-page document, and what you're looking for is maybe, an introduction or 2 to start really checking. The goal is to start checking those companies off your list, and have just informational conversations, right? It doesn't have to be that there's a job available at every one of your targets. But now you want to, go ahead.
Would you have people forward this document to their network so their network knows what's up? Is that what you mean? Or use this as a checklist?
So no. So that one pager, right? What I would recommend is you set up the phone calls, Chris, or the coffees with these people, is that you either send it to them in advance of that conversation, or maybe you present it to them and hand it to them during that conversation. Because what you're looking for each person that you talk to is 1 to 3 companies where they potentially know someone. Right? And now you have those conversations, you start making progress, like you feel like you're making actual progress, right? Now, the idea is that you want to be top of mind when opportunities come available. And here's the most amazing thing too, the power of your network is actually not who you know, right? It's your second level connections are actually more powerful to you. So those introductions you get from people that you know are like gold. So as I wrap this up, I created a doc on Google. There's a slide share called the Ultimate Job Search Tool. People can go there and create their own Ultimate Job Search Tool, this one pager, or they can just use this model and create one themselves.
Outstanding. Wow, cool. And Stan, I noticed you've commented on the chat somewhere, and it came through on the YouTube stream. Can you drop that link in there, and then I can pull that and put it in the notes here? So,
absolutely. Let me do that.
Great. And I'm gonna pull one, or at least I'm gonna test you guys from the Pink Goldfish book, and in there it's between weird and normal and more and less. And because I knew I tend to opt to this Captain Corporate white background stuff. I decided I'm going to go all in for you guys, and I need you guys to tell me if it's more or less or whatever. So I'm going to go with my. Here we go.
That's just right.
And there we go.
That's just right. That's the just right amount.
And it's I can level up that as well, meaning I probably can't see without these glasses, but I'm going to put on my.
Chris, I'm gonna share one of my favorite lines from Spinal Tap.
All right.
There's such a fine line between clever and stupid.
I think you can only figure out.
No, don't listen to Stan.
Afterwards, it's kind of like bravery and stupidity. You don't know until you've been there. So I'm going to lean into it. I got this.
No, the line from Spinal Tap is Chris just turned it up to 11. Chris just turned it up to 11. That's what he just did.
Louder.
I don't know if it makes any more employable. But
yeah, one louder.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter the story where I got this. I actually won a hair flipping contest on a Taylor Swift global community with my pink unicorn hair. That's why, and I'm sticking with it. So,
See?
So
and you won
David,
because it was one louder.
Boom! Actually, to third place, silver medal on the hair flipping contest. But still, I'm proud of it. David, about focusing on yourself, and I know myself, I've been in roles that I shouldn't have been in. Stan with his ultimate job search tool. I'd like to provide two other things, and I'll share my screen. My first job out of university was with a telco, which was a brilliant experience, and it was actually probably the last place I should have been. So I should have listened to you guys and maybe oriented a bit more, because sales really wasn't my thing. And when I was going out of there, this document, I went and found the oldest one I could find. Goes back to 1998. And what I realized, and it's been proven as I've been a hiring manager so often now after that, is sifting through resumes and CVs to find out who is a potential even person to interview is so mind-numbing. I think it's 4 seconds a recruiter actually looks at a resume before they make a decision whether they want to talk to you or not. Maybe slightly longer if you're coming in through a referral type of relationship. But what I always put, and I haven't applied for too many jobs lately, but I do now and again. Right now my CTO role just ended just before Corona. I always put what I call an executive summary instead of a cover letter. I don't live there anymore. None of that is any good anymore. And the executive summary is simply this: hey, I'm interested in your job. And on the one column is, here's the requirements that you've asked for. And on the other one is, this is how I qualify for that. And it's just check.
Yeah.
And that's later I actually put on, in later versions in later years, I put, hey, and please call me. That's an obvious call to action to put there. And what I found is oftentimes the people who are vetting resumes and CVs are not the person who's actually the hiring manager. So they really have no idea how to figure out, and oftentimes it's even a machine, how to find out if you're an actual match. And this is just a check. I'd like to say it's guaranteed to get an interview. Not always the case, of course, but it takes the question away from the person who's doing the vetting. So once you have figured out that special place you want to be in, through David's advice, and then once you have oriented and found those companies, this is a way for you at least to look at the role, what they're requiring. And honestly, I think to lean back into what David said, if when you fill this out, there's a couple of those requirements that don't feel good to you. I like to say, if it doesn't feel good, it's not going to end well. If you have to stretch or lie or bend to fill this form out, then please don't send it. So the second tip I would give, and I love it when people do this, and you can use it for a couple of different things. This is a simplicity scan that I have made over time with lots of input from other people, basically to keep myself out of trouble. And so when I'm invited to get into an initiative, and I'm in that process with a really cool team in the voice interaction space right now, with those founders or the management team, I use this sometimes literally in the back of a napkin as a checklist. And if I can get on the same page with those people, then I make it myself more open to proceeding. What I've also seen people do successfully is when they're going after a job with a company, there's, when I'm interviewing people, I hope that through that meaningful conversation that we're trying to discover, that they will have some questions for me at the end of the interview. I would like them to challenge me and stump me on things that maybe don't make sense, or maybe things that need to be improved about the organization. And one tip is fill this out from an external perspective for the company you're applying to. Look at their website, their annual report, talk to friends that work there, and you're probably going to find things that don't make sense to you or you don't understand. And that is a perfect way to find, say, hey, I really looked at your company. I'm really interested in this job. I think I really meet, what you're looking for. And this, and this, I I would really like to dive into that further. If you do get the job, this is also a perfect piece for your first 100 days, because this has just oriented you, and now you can make your action plan right off of that. So it's so those are the two things I like: the executive summary, and then use some sort of tool, some sort of scan, canvas, doesn't matter what, in order to really think holistically about that challenge, and then you can come in, with a lot of intelligence and value even in your questioning. So. Did the wig help or hurt my pitch and my authority in this area?
It dramatically increased my focus and attention on you. And I'm sure anybody who's coming across this video, once they saw it at that point, they're like, I need to hear the unicorn pink wig guy talk.
So maybe we should call it the unicorn.
It also makes Stan a little jealous. All that thick flowing hair, winning a hair flip contest. You're really sticking it to Stan with that. You're really. I can send you a silver horn as well if you need.
I don't know how can I compete with dinosaurs and unicorns? Come on.
You got the sweet pink background, Stan, and the goldfish mobile. Come on, it's wonderful.
So wrapping up, why don't we go back the other way? And so what I'm saying, an executive summary, just checklist out how you meet that. Use some sort of scan or tool or business model canvas, doesn't matter what. Do some homework before the interview. So Stan, your highlight?
Absolutely.
No, I shared the ultimate job search tool, the slide share that has the Google Doc link in it. So use that tool. Don't feel like you're making progress just by hitting the send button on job sites.
Yeah. David?
The thing I repeat in my presentations is that what makes us weird also makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak also makes us strong. And I think if we believe that, it brings more confidence to the interview process, and we're also more willing to do something different. Like, don't send in a resume at all. Send in a video of you explaining why you're a good fit for the job, or send in a portfolio of your projects. Send in some photos, send in something in all color, refuse to send in a resume at all, contact people like Stan said it a completely different way. There's no way to have a good resume, because a good resume is just like everybody else's. So it's looking for that. What is unique about me that's the right fit for this? Why is this the right fit for me? And do I believe that strongly enough that I'm willing to do something that would be weird, but that's exactly what would make it wonderful? Is, like you said, no one's paying attention to all that other stuff. So you have to cut through the clutter. And the one way to do that is with uniqueness, not by pretending to be somebody you're not, but by being unashamed about being who you really are.
Outstanding. Guys, thank you so much. And it's a hard time out there. 32% unemployment expected in the US. Same things going around Europe. The timing's maybe a little different, but it's a hard time. So for everyone, best of luck out there. Be yourself, lean into yourself. Here's some tips and tricks to help you on your way. And I'll make sure that the template from Stan makes its way somehow to the links here. And if not, you can find us all, Stan and David, I'm sure, on Facebook and other places, and on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate the time. Have a great day.
Yep.
See you guys.
Thanks, Chris. Bye. Enjoy the rest of the party.
Great.